Steven Seagal was a huge action movie star in the late 1980s and early 1990s. He became famous for movies like Under Siege, where he played tough guys who could beat anyone in a fight. He wasn't just an actor, he was a real martial arts expert who knew Aikido, a Japanese fighting style. His punches looked real because they were real. For a while, he was as famous as Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone. But behind all that success was a sad story of broken marriages, a career that fell apart, and a man who struggled his whole life. Now at 71 years old, Steven Seagal faces harder times than ever before. Stephen Frederick Seagal was born on April 10, 1952, in Lansing, Michigan. His dad Samuel was a math teacher, and his mom Patricia worked as a medical technician. They weren't rich, but they worked hard to take care of their family. Stephen was a sick kid who had really bad asthma. He could barely breathe sometimes, and his parents were always worried he might die. While other kids played outside, Stephen had to stay inside and watch through the window. He felt weak and different from everyone else. Kids at school made fun of him, which hurt his feelings. When Stephen was 5 years old in 1957, his parents made a big decision. They moved the whole family from cold Michigan to sunny California, hoping the warm weather would help Stephen breathe better. His dad worked even harder to pay the bills, and his mom had to start over in a new place. The move helped. Stephen could finally breathe without so much pain. The warm California air saved his life. But he never forgot how weak he used to be, and he promised himself he would become strong. When Stephen was 22 years old in 1974, he did something amazing. He traveled all the way to Japan to learn Aikido. Back then, very few Americans were allowed to train in traditional Japanese martial arts schools. In Japan, he met Miyako Fujitani, the daughter of a famous Aikido master. She was already a black belt and a teacher herself. They fell in love and got married. Through Miyako, Stephen got to train in real Aikido schools, but it wasn't easy. The Japanese students and teachers didn't trust him at first. They thought an American couldn't really learn their martial art. Stephen got thrown to the floor over and over again until his whole body hurt. Some nights he felt so lonely and wondered if he should give up. But he kept going back every single day, bowing respectfully to the same teachers who doubted him. Slowly, things changed. Stephen got so good at Aikido that people started to respect him. By the late 1970s, he became one of the very first Americans to run an Aikido school in Japan. This was a huge deal. The sick little boy who could barely breathe was now teaching martial arts in Japan. But Stephen wanted more. He dreamed of being in movies and showing the whole world what he could do. In the early 1980s, Stephen came back to America. In 1983, when he was 31 years old, he opened his own Aikido school in West Hollywood with his partner Haruo Matsuoka. But life was really hard. The school didn't make much money, and Stephen struggled to pay rent. Some nights he stood alone in his empty school, looking at bills he couldn't pay, wondering if he made a mistake coming back to America. Not many students came to learn, and some people thought Aikido was just like dancing, not real fighting. Stephen had to take side jobs working on movie sets, helping with fight scenes. He worked on movies like Never Say Never Again with James Bond, but he was just behind the camera, not the star. Every day he watched other people pretend to fight while he knew he could do it better. He wanted so badly to be in front of the camera, to show everyone what real martial arts looked like. But nobody in Hollywood would give him a chance. Movie executives said no over and over again. Stephen was broke and struggling, but he never gave up. Everything changed in 1988 when Stephen was 36 years old. He finally got his big break with the movie Above the Law. Nobody expected this quiet guy with a ponytail to become a star, but he did. His fighting in the movie looked so real and powerful that audiences were amazed. He wasn't like other action heroes who did flashy moves. Stephen's fights looked like they could really hurt someone. The movie was a hit, and suddenly Steven Seagal was famous. More movies came quickly. Hard to Kill in 1990, Marked for Death in 1990, and Out for Justice in 1991. Each movie made him more popular. Then in 1992 came Under Siege, his biggest movie ever. Stephen played a Navy cook who fights terrorists on a battleship. The movie made over $150 million worldwide, and everyone said it was one of the best action movies ever made. Steven Seagal was now a superstar, just as famous as the biggest action heroes in Hollywood. But success doesn't last forever. In 1994, Steven directed a movie called On Deadly Ground. He put his heart into it and tried to add messages about protecting the environment. But critics hated it, and audiences didn't want to see it. The movie failed badly at the box office. Steven said later that he tried to say too much and maybe people weren't ready to hear it. His other movies in the mid-1990s like Under Siege 2 and Executive Decision didn't do as well either. People were losing interest in his films. By the late 1990s, something really sad happened. Steven's movies stopped going to theaters. Instead, they went straight to DVD and were sold in discount bins at stores. For someone who used to be a huge star making millions of dollars, this felt humiliating. Steven said it was like drowning while the world just moved on without him. Watching everything he built slowly fall apart was one of the most painful things he ever experienced. When Hollywood didn't want him anymore, Steven tried other things. In 2005 and 2006, he released music albums called Songs from the Crystal Cave and Mojo Priest. Steven had always loved playing guitar since he was a kid, and now he wanted to share his music. But people weren't kind. Critics said his singing was flat and his songs weren't good. Late-night TV hosts made jokes about him. Instead of helping his comeback, the music made people laugh at him even more. Steven said he just wanted to play music he loved, but it hurt when people mocked him. He also tried starting businesses. He tried to make a video game called Deadly Honor, but it got cancelled before it came out. He created an energy drink with his name on it, but it disappeared from stores almost immediately. He tried selling colognes and martial arts collectibles, but those failed too. In Tennessee, Steven owned a huge mansion worth $3.9 million, but he couldn't sell it. Finally, he had to let it go for only $500,000. Losing that house felt like losing a piece of his empire. Steven said the hardest part wasn't losing money, it was losing people's faith in him and his own faith in himself. Steven's personal life was even harder than his career problems. His first marriage to Miyako in Japan fell apart because he left to chase his Hollywood dreams. He had 2 children with her, but he wasn't there to raise them. He was always working in America while they grew up in Japan without their father. Steven later admitted he wanted fame so badly that he lost the people who mattered most. After divorcing Miyako, Steven quickly married actress Adrienne LaRussa in the early 1980s. But that marriage ended almost as fast as it started. It only lasted a few months. Steven was searching for peace and trying to fill the emptiness inside him, but marrying someone when you're desperate doesn't work. Then came his most famous marriage. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, Steven married Kelly LeBrock, a beautiful actress and model. They seemed perfect together, the tough action star and the gorgeous movie star. Their wedding was huge with cameras everywhere. They had 3 children together, and for a while, everything looked like a fairy tale. But behind closed doors, things were falling apart. Steven was always away filming movies. Rumors started spreading that he was cheating on Kelly. Whether the rumors were true or not, they hurt Kelly deeply. She felt alone, raising 3 kids mostly by herself while her husband was gone. The trust between them broke. By the mid-1990s, they divorced. Kelly got custody of all 3 children, and Steven had to watch them grow up from a distance. The divorce was messy with fights over money and custody. Tabloids wrote about every detail, turning their private pain into public entertainment. Steven later said he lost things he could never get back. After Kelly, Steven eventually married Erdenechia El Batsik, a dancer from Mongolia. They met in the early 2000s when she worked as his translator. Unlike his other marriages, this one was quiet and private. They had a son named Kunzang together. By this time, Steven was past 50 years old and said this felt like a second chance at having a family. But the guilt still haunted him. Steven now has 7 children total from different marriages, and he knows he missed so much of their lives. As Steven got older, his body started breaking down. All those years of martial arts training and movie stunts damaged his joints and muscles. His wrists, shoulders, hips, and knees all hurt from being thrown and hitting the ground thousands of times. By his 50s, Steven had gained weight and couldn't move as fast as before. The quick, graceful movements he was famous for became slower and more careful. His body kept a record of every punch, every fall, every injury. Getting up in the morning became harder. Walking down stairs hurt. Steven admitted that every step he takes now reminds him of the battles that brought him here. In his 60s and 70s, Steven had to find a different kind of courage, the courage to keep going even when his body wouldn't cooperate anymore. Today at 71, Steven Seagal lives in a big house in Arizona with bulletproof glass and samurai statues everywhere. It looks like a fortress. His net worth is about $14 million, which sounds like a lot, but is way less than other action stars from his time who are worth hundreds of millions. He still has some cool cars in his garage, like a 1973 Mustang and a rare Jaguar. But mostly, Steven spends his time with his wife Elle and their son Kunzang. He does meditation, practices light martial arts to stay healthy, and tries to enjoy quiet family time. He doesn't make big movies anymore, just small projects here and there. The thunder and applause are gone. The world doesn't cheer his name like before. Steven Seagal's story teaches us important lessons. Fame and success can disappear quickly. The strongest people can fall. The real battles in life aren't fought in movies but in our homes with our families. Steven was the sick kid who became a martial arts master, then a Hollywood superstar, and now an old man looking for peace. He made mistakes, lost marriages, missed his children's childhoods, and watched his career crumble. But he's still here, still standing, still trying. That's its own kind of strength, just keeping going, one step at a time, even when everything has fallen apart.